Hi, welcome to Story Time. I thought you might like to join me as we read a story, and it's by this chap. Who's this? Well, tonight's story comes from an author who was born on the 2nd of April 1805 in Denmark, and he had a stepsister called Karen, not sure why that's relevant, and his father, who was by the same name as him, considered himself to be related to nobility, but investigations have disproven these theories. And there's a lot of speculation that he might have been the illegitimate son of King Christian VIII, but that's been challenged. So, who is my historic author born in Denmark in 1805? I don't know if that's a Danish accent, but this great storyteller was baptized on the 15th of April. They were all religious back in those days. Everyone had a baptism at least once. And this guy had six, count them, six and another one, godparents. Seems a bit strange. And he was sent to a local school for poor children where he received a basic education and then had to support himself working as an apprentice to a weaver. So this is someone from very humble beginnings. This is almost sounding like that great TV show. Who would live in a house like this? David, it's over to you. What was he called? That very posh American chap. But this author, whose story we will hear shortly, they paid their first visit to England in 1847. So a Scandinavian who was familiar with the UK, and the Countess of Blessington invited him to her parties where intellectual people would meet. And it was at one of such parties where he met Charles Dickens. So Dickensian England is, of course, Christmas Carol and lots of poor people suffering, and Dickens kind of feeling for them. So maybe this storyteller also gave the side of the poor and wanted to give them a fair crack of the whip. After he visited England, he came back primarily to meet Dickens, and he extended the visit to go to Charles Dickens. Wow, I never would have known that this guy was, I didn't even know that he was around at the same time as Dickens, but it all makes sense now. And the fact that he was Danish means that his stories will have been translated from Danish to English, if you're familiar with them. I wonder, have they lost a lot in translation? Because you do lose the meaning sometimes. And I know a lot of religious people say, oh, no, you can never translate the Quran. The Quran is only the Quran in Arabic, and anything else doesn't come close. So why is that not true of other books? I'll give it away, shall I? Unless anyone in the comments would like to hazard a guess. Who is this? It's Hans Christian Andersen. And Mohammed Omar saying Danish guy looks very Indian. Yes, he does, doesn't he? Whatever that means. What a racist comment from you there, Mohammed Omar. Should be ashamed of yourself. Give Peace was guessing Franz Kafka. No, good guess, great guess, but it's Hans Christian Andersen. And we are, of course, going to enjoy his greatest story, which is, I'm sure you all know it, The Emperor's New Clothes. But before we get to that, we've just got to do a little bit of background on the author. And I think it might be important to know what's the difference between an emperor and a king. And if you are not familiar with Hans Christian Andersen, I think his most famous story is the Emperor's New Clothes, which we will get to in a moment. But he also wrote such classics as The Little Mermaid. I know. I thought Walt Disney wrote that one. The Red Shoes, haven't seen that. The Snow Queen, which was written in 1844, which was a very important year for many people and a very disappointing year for some. He wrote Thumbelina, The Teapot, The Ugly Duckling. Yes, that I can really identify with that one. I'm still waiting to grow into a swan, maybe when I hit 40, maybe. But we are going to enjoy the Emperor's New Clothes. And has anyone got the definition of an emperor as opposed to a king? I suppose a king has a kingdom, and an emperor has an empire. So maybe an emperor is greater than a king. But it was all royalty back in those days. If this was written now, we'd probably be talking about the president's new clothes or some other equivalent leader, the mayor. But if you're ready, and if no one has any questions about Hans Christian Andersen, we'll enjoy the story and feel free to interject if you've got any analysis in the comments. And if you want to get on screen, you can click the link in the description. Come and join me as we go on a magical adventure and travel back 200 years to the time of the Emperor's New Clothes. Many years ago, there was an emperor. So if this was written 200 years ago and it was already many years ago, we're talking a long, long time ago, aren't we? Many years ago, there was an emperor so exceedingly fond of new clothes that he spent all his money on being well dressed. Some people don't buy new clothes at all. In some circles, it's kind of it's frowned upon, and they'll go to charity shops, or if not charity shops, shops that specialize in selling secondhand clothing. And it's not always, just stuff that people have thrown away. You can dress very well. I think vintage, is that the word I'm looking for? Vintage shops where people buy old clothes, but it's very sort of fine, and there's nothing cheapskate about it. Yeah, vintage clothing. I think George Galloway, possibly. Correct me if I'm wrong, George. I know you watch this channel from time to time, even when you're not on it. Does he wear vintage clothing? I think maybe he does. And where do we get the word vintage from? Is it from the vine, where we get the grape for the wine? And the vintage is a very good wine, isn't it? If it's been in there for 20 years, which of course in French is vin, spelt in a very similar way. Vintage, vin, vinegar, wine, the vine, something that took a long time to grow. There you go. There's a little lesson for life for you. He was so exceedingly fond of new clothes that he spent all his money on being well dressed. It's hard to spend all your money on anything, isn't it? I think the only thing that most people manage to spend all their money on is usually either drugs or gambling. That's the one thing. The one thing that you can spend all you've got and more on is gambling. And if you want to have $1 million from gambling, start with 2 million. He cared nothing about reviewing his soldiers. What does that mean? Reviewing his soldiers. Why would you need to review your soldiers? He cared nothing about reviewing his soldiers, going to the theatre, or going for a ride in his carriage. And there he is being carried around. There's another artist's impression. Is that his carriage? This is how the emperor may have looked, as an artist's impression. Except to show off his new clothes, he had a coat for every hour of the day. And instead of saying, as one might, about any other ruler, the king's in council, here they always said, the emperor's in his dressing room. The king's in council. Nice bit of alliteration there, but that might only be in the English translation. Give Peter saying, I think it was about 100 years. It was a shot in the dark. Yeah, well, good guess. It's good. It's not right. There's the there's the king, and yeah, they would say that the king is in his dressing room. In the great city where he lived, life was always gay. Now, I know what you're thinking. In those days, everyone was gay. Yeah. Life in the great city where he lived was always gay. Every day, many strangers came to town, and among them, one day, came 2 swindlers. I wonder what the Danish word for swindler was. They let it be known they were weavers, and they said they could weave the most magnificent fabrics imaginable. Not only were their colours and patterns uncommonly fine, but clothes made of this cloth had a wonderful way of becoming invisible to anyone who was unfit for his office or who was unusually stupid. Right. Those would be just the clothes for me, thought the emperor. If I wore them, I would be able to discover which men in my empire are unfit for their posts. Right, so he's believing this lie about the clothes being only visible to those that are suitable for their office. So he's gullible enough to think that clothes could be invisible, and he thinks he's gonna find out who the fools are in his empire, but at the risk of being seen naked. No, those would be just the clothes for me, thought the emperor. If I wore them, I would be able to discover which men in my empire are unfit for their posts, and I could tell the wise men from the fools. Yes, I certainly must get some of the stuff woven for me right away. He paid the 2 swindlers a large sum of money to start work at once. I'm not sure how many kroner that would have been, but it's obviously euros now. Is it? No, it's not. Denmark are not euros, are they? Still kroner. Give Peter saying, swine. I wonder, does the word swindler, as in someone who rips you off, come from swine, as in pigs? Because there's a lot of negativity around pigs, isn't there? Swine. Even Jesus, when he cast out the demons from people, put the demons into the swine that ran into the water. So even Jesus was having a pop at pigs, apparently. Swindler in Danish is Svindler. There you go. Not far removed. I guess it probably is a Germanic word then, isn't it? Swine in Danish is svin. That's great, Give Peace. Have you got Google Translate at hand, or are you a bilingual English-Danish translator at night? Continuing the story. They set up 2 looms and pretended to weave, though there was nothing on the looms. All the finest silk and the purest old thread which they demanded went into their travelling bags. Oh, great. So they're getting all the resources, but they're pocketing it and profiting. while they worked the empty looms far into the night. It's funny, many years ago, when I was a lot younger and a bit silly, a couple of mates and I crept into Reading Festival on the last evening when everyone was very, very drunk. And all these revelers were coming across the path. And we pretended that we were holding some kind of rope and we were miming and saying, "Oh, watch out, mind the rope, watch out." And we were like lowering it and raising it. And then we encouraged people to limbo under this invisible wire that we were pretending to hold. And as soon as the first lot did it, people behind were trying to limbo under it, people were ducking under it. They really believed that we were holding a piece of wire just because we told them that we were. They worked the empty looms far into the night. I'd like to know how those weavers are getting on with the cloth, the emperor thought, but he felt slightly uncomfortable when he remembered that those who were unfit for their position would not be able to see the fabric. Right, so he's starting to doubt himself. He's starting to question his own, what's the word? Integrity. There's a word that people throw around a lot these days, gaslighting. And I'm not exactly sure what it means. Does it mean making someone believe that they're crazy? It comes up a lot in discussions around abuse. And if someone is abusing you, they might gaslight you and really make you question yourself, make you think that you're losing it, when actually they're the ones who are losing it and you were right all along. It couldn't have been that he doubted himself, yet he thought he'd rather send someone else to see how things were going. The whole town knew about the clothes' particular power, and all were impatient to find out how stupid their neighbours were. Okay, so a lot of people curious about their neighbours, not being very neighbourly, is it, if you are peering over the garden fence and wondering how stupid they are? That's not what we expect. We've got Give Peace. Hello.
Oh.
The Emperor's new haircut. How you doing, brother?
Can you hear me?
Great to see you. We can hear you. We can see you. We can almost smell you. How's it going?
Oh, you don't do that.
No, it's all good. What are you familiar with Hans Christian Andersen? I didn't know he wrote The Mermaid.
No,
I'm
completely unfamiliar. It's probably I might have heard it when I was a kid, the story, but
yeah, I think we all probably heard it in school assembly. But here we are again. So the weavers they've pulled the wool over his eyes, so to speak. And this is the emperor saying, "I'll send my honest old minister to the weavers." The emperor decided he'll be the best one to tell me how the material looks, for he's a sensible man and no one does his duty better. I wonder who Boris Johnson would send on a mission like this. Who would he trust?
What to fit him out with clothes?
Yeah, or to find out the truth about the looms. The honest old minister went to the room where the two swindlers sat working away at the empty looms. Heaven help me, he thought as his eyes flew wide open. I can't see anything at all. But he did not say so. Have you heard about the experiment where they get a room full of people and like 29 of them are in on it, and there's one guy who isn't, and they show three like lines on the screen, and one of them is blatantly longer than the other. But when everyone else is saying it's the one on the right, and your eyes are telling you it's the one on the left, most people will just go with the consensus and say, yeah, it's the one on the right, because we don't want to be sticking out like a sore thumb. Even we would trust other people rather than our own eyesight.
I can
Have you ever been in a
I've not.
situation like that give peace?
Have you seen
Or have you
Alex
frozen?
Zane's? Oh, really?
I don't know if it's you or the computer,
You're like
but I'll continue the story, and if Give Peace is there, he'll hear it.
I can hear you and I can see you.
No, go on. You're with. Yeah, I'm with you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Ah, cool. Right. My mind's gone blank now because of that. What were we just speaking about?
You're going to host the show now. All right. Don't worry. We'll
Um.
go on.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. We were talking about like if there's a group of people and 29 people say it and then the one person goes along. Have you watched Balls of Steel? Have you seen that?
Was it some kind of prank show where they do daring feats?
Yeah, yeah. There was one guy. He's called Alex Zane, and he does a game show, and he
Yeah.
and he gets their buzzer to like buzz and stuff, and it's quite similar to what you're explaining.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
should
yeah, yeah.
watch
A
it.
lot, a lot of these great experiments have been done again and again. I know Darren Brown has repeated a lot of the old psychological experiments. You've got the Milgram experiment, I think, where people were willing to administer a near lethal or possibly lethal electric shock to someone just for getting a question wrong. There's also the prison experiment where people who are assigned to be prison guards end up bullying the hell out of people that are assigned to be prisoners just because they've been labeled something different from each other. Yeah, human psychology doesn't change much, sadly, as much as we think we're moving on and we're not going to fall for it. And wow, many tragedies and atrocities in history, we look back and say, how could those people do that? And then little do we know what would we do in those situations.
It's
But I
quite hard
wonder
to
what
say.
we'd do. Yeah, I wonder what we'd do if we were the advisor to the emperor. Both swindlers begged him to be so kind as to come near to approve the excellent pattern, the beautiful colours. They pointed to the empty looms, and the poor old minister stared as hard as he dared. He couldn't see anything because there was nothing to see. Heaven have mercy, he thought. Can it be that I'm a fool? I'd have never guessed it, and not a soul must know. Am I unfit to be the minister? It would never do to let on that I can't see the cloth. So, like most people, he'd rather be stupid than look stupid. He doesn't want to raise the alarm.
Be stupid and look stupid.
It's all about perception. He's panicking rather than saying, "Hang on a minute, I'll be honest, I can't see
Wait
this."
wait a second though,
Yeah,
because I might do something similar where,
might you?
yeah, where people at work, I, like they, some people think I come across as quite like a bit thick, but I'm not. Like, well, I'm not stupid. I'm not like dumb. But if people think I'm stupid and treat me like I'm stupid, I will play stupid whilst trying to
Mhm.
outsmart them. So maybe he's doing that.
The wise man can play the fool, but the fool can't play the wise man.
It's a good quote.
When I've worked with young people, very often I will do the same, and I will try to spot who is going to correct me, spot the deliberate mistake, and it's got me thinking about magic. I've done a little bit of work as a magician, and more so a mind magician than sleight of hand and that sort of thing. But I do know that when people do sleight of hand and vanishes and that sort of thing, the coin will be gone. But because the magician is looking at his hand as if the coin is there, people will swear that they saw it. And you have to really almost believe it yourself that you've got the coin in your hand, for them to believe it, then pause, allow enough time to elapse so they forget what happened, and then say, almost as if you're surprised, and your surprise reinforces their surprise, and doing anything with conviction. It will convince many people. I mean, I'm not proud of this, but I used to try to get on the bus with a young person's rail card, which of course has nothing to do with getting on a bus. It's a different vehicle, but I would get on and with confidence show the card, and the driver would, yeah, on you go, yeah, on you go. And if you do it confidently, no problem. But if you're like, is this okay? You know, you're going to be rumbled. But I don't do that anymore, and I paid back all the money I owed the Transport for London.
Wow. How did you do that?
Yeah, I did. I deposited it anonymously one night outside the. Yeah.
It's like My Name's Earl when he tried to. You watched that when he tried to pay it off, and they kept sending him the check back. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can resonate with that. Okay, so we got as far as I can't see the cloth. Don't hesitate to tell us what you think of it, said one of the weavers. Oh, it's beautiful, it's enchanting, the old minister peered through his spectacles. Such a pattern. What colours! I'll be sure to tell the emperor how delighted I am with it. I mean, maybe this is again being polite. If the Hunchback of Notre Dame says, how do I look? You know, what do you say to him? How honest are you, Give Peace? At what point does honesty and rudeness overlap?
It depends how much of a stranger you are, or how friendly I am with you. If I'm quite friendly with you, I'll be completely honest. But if I'm if it's like small talk, then I might not tell them the brutal truth.
What do you think of my channel in general?
I really like it.
I really like it. You're polite.
No.
I assume you do like it, as you join me on here, and you've always shown great support. But it's not for everyone, and I appreciate that sometimes.
Yeah, I think you explore quite like topics that I'm interested in. You explore topics that I haven't looked into, but that I find interesting. And yeah, it's just, yeah, I think it's good.
Well, fantastic. Well, that's why you hear my 11-year-old stepdaughter at one point said rather bluntly, "Your channel's boring."
No,
it's not for everyone.
So the lady that used to take me to church.
Oh yeah.
She told me, and I didn't think it at the time, but now I say it. Anyone who says like, "Oh, it's boring," it's boring. Well, actually, no, I don't say it to everyone. If I'm not friendly with them, I won't bother. But only boring people get bored.
No, that's a good one. Yeah, boring people get bored, and of course, the attention span of the young generation has just been destroyed, and people are becoming boring because they want to be entertained all the time. They don't know how to be an entertainer. And there are some people who are the opposite, and I hope I'm not like this, but you get some people who they just have to be the center of attention all the time, and if they're not, they can't cope with it, and they get bored very quickly. Some geniuses like that. I imagine some comedians that are like that, and I think you can't operate like that all the time, always being high energy, or make you laugh. You need to learn to be a listener as well as a talker.
Yeah.
But you know, we all strive to be a rounded individual. This is the Swindlers now. We're pleased to hear that, the Swindlers said. They proceeded to name all the colours and to explain the intricate pattern. The old minister paid the closest attention so that he could tell it all to the emperor, and so he did. The Swindlers at once asked for more money. Give us more money, more silk and gold thread to get on with the weaving. But it all went into their pockets. Not a thread went into the looms, though they worked at their weaving as hard as ever. Loom, that's a good word. The loom is what they spin, what they make the garments with. I wonder, does the word looming, as in something looming over us, does it come from the same? Does the verb come from the noun? Would it be a different meaning?
So loom is a spindle, so it goes round, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
like maybe this the moon looms over. I
Love
don't
it.
know.
Yeah, the loom, the loon, lunar, loom spins round the moon, goes round. I love it.
Guessing.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, you could be right. The emperor presently sent another trustworthy official to see how the work progressed and how soon it would be ready. The same, that's so he's sending trustworthy people, although not really. He is sending people that have always probably told him what he wanted to hear. And that doesn't make someone trustworthy. The true friend will tell you if your channel is boring, or if what if you've got spinach in your teeth, they'll tell you the things that you don't want to hear that you need to hear. The same thing happened to him that had happened to the minister. He looked and he looked, but as there was nothing to see in the loom, he couldn't see anything. Isn't it a beautiful piece of goods, the Swindlers asked, as they displayed and described their imaginary pattern? This is almost like leading questions in experiments on eyewitness testimony. They show a video of an incident of a car crash, and if they say, "Did you see the broken glass?" people will say, "Yes, I did," even though if there's no broken glass in the clip. Asking it like that plants it in your mind, and you'll swear that you did see. I swear. I still argue with my mum about this till this day. I saw my brother drive past in a car once, but it must have been his friend and someone else. And I said, "How's he back here? I've just seen him go past in the car." And she's like, "No, he's been here." I said, "But I saw him drive past in the car." But this is the thing with memory. You fill in the blanks. And looking into editing and putting videos together, I've discovered that like a lot of footage that we see on TV is shot at 30 frames per second. But in the cinema, do you know how many frames per second it is in cinema footage?
60.
24.
Oh.
Because it's a more imaginative experience and it's more engrossing. Yeah, 30 frames per second. I mean, at 16 frames per second, we see motion. You can animate, I think, from 16 onwards, and it will look like motion. 30 frames per second, and 60 frames per second often for high speed footage of like action, so you don't get blurry image. But cinema is shot, and that famous cinema film 24 frames per second. And that is a more imaginative, engrossing experience because I think your brain is filling in the gaps. And as you remember what you've seen, it will kind of enhance this more engrossing experience. So there you go. Keep it 24 frames per second if you want it.
I'll ask my cousin.
Is he or she into filming?
Yeah, he does like lots of filming jobs.
Yeah.
For like TV and documentaries. So
Well, there's something in it, that 24 frames per second, and when it switches out from that, I don't know if you've seen Love Actually. to pick a random film. It's a Christmas romantic comedy that follows the stories of different characters in the build up to Christmas. But right at the end, it switches to real footage from Heathrow Airport and loved ones greeting each other at Heathrow Airport. And when it switches to video, sort of like camcorder style footage, I think it's then shown at 30 frames per second. And it's a very sort of almost like you're waking up and you're very aware that, oh, what I've been seeing before was very, very different to this. It seems sort of incongruent or out of place, but just it it sticks with you.
I like the idea of that, to be honest. I think put everything in the best resolution possible, and it's like
Well, this is the
facts.
but you say best. It's the most suitable for the job, and the highest is not always the best.
Well, surely it's the best for the eye, because your eye will pick it up as a more of a, not just still images put together.
Have you never enjoyed a black and white film? No.
To be fair, I don't watch films.
Oh, do you not? Okay.
No, I can't deal with imaginary.
You're more into realism. Get the encyclopedia out. And true stories, yeah, or reality. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just thinking in some films where they shoot in black and white. For example, Schindler's List tells the story of a young girl in Germany at that time, and at one point, it's a black and white film, although created long after color was available. It was shot in black and white to suggest being of the era. But at one point, her red coat is visible as red, and is the only red that you see throughout the film, and sort of it stands out for that reason. Similarly, Raging Bull, Robert De Niro plays the Raging Bull. Jake LaMotta, middleweight champion, who had a great rivalry with Sugar Ray Robinson. Black and white film, but at some point in the middle, there's this kind of montage of memories and photographs, and the photographs are color. So again, sort of breaking the mold, and it just sort of trips you up at the time.
It sounds almost, it's like it's making the film a personal experience, which for the individual, but that's not objective, which is quite that's probably why I don't like the idea of it. But yeah, sorry.
That's all right. I can appreciate that you are someone who is eager for facts. And are you right-handed? I mean, most people are.
Yeah.
Okay. Just that they say that so if you're right-handed, the left side of your brain, the left hemisphere, is more dominant, and that's more to do with order, facts, yes, no, very sort of binary. Left-handed people like me, who use the right hemisphere of their brain, are more creative, more abstract ideas rather than facts and figures and numbers. I mean, no one is completely one way or the other, but I'm just thinking you might be a bit more yin to my yang in that sense, because I'm a little bit more fluid and out there, and maybe not so big on facts, but more about meaning. And from my time teaching religious education, we would always say we're going to learn about religion, like the facts. They pray 5 times a day. The book's called the Quran, and learn from religion, which is, well, what does this mean to me? How do I cope with death in my family? What are the rites of passage in my life? So you
how can you get meaning without facts?
Well, good. It's a good point, but sometimes people ignore the facts and just go with what it means to them. The ancients worshipped the sun. They thought we were created by the sun. We weren't, but that's what it meant to them. You could say, well, they were looking for God. I mean, where else would you look? If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, no, it's a good point. Where is meaning without fact?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to combine both of them and try and not look at the meaning to yourself, but look at the meaning, what it would mean to everyone.
What it would mean
Yeah.
to everyone.
But
Yeah.
when you talk about the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the brain, is that
Mm.
rooted in fact, or is that kind of don't know, wish-washy?
Good question. I'm not sure how neuroscientists have found out. I mean, they put sensors on your brain, don't they? And they see which bits light up when you're thinking about certain things. I mean, if from my time in studying mentalism, woof, down boy, um, there was a routine where you would tell someone, imagine a memory, an important childhood memory, uh, and then you would tell them uh, to conjure up an imaginary scenario, like think of a red car driving down a busy street. And because one of them is requiring you to access a genuine memory, and one of them is requiring you to conjure up new ideas that you've never thought of, you apparently would look to different corners of your eye, and the mentalist could deduce what the
Yeah.
person was thinking by
So
watching the eye movement.
left is supposed to be
Now, I'm not,
your
I'm not entirely sure
okay.
which side was which, but it was definitely if they look up one way, they're
Yeah,
thinking of a memory.
left is your remembering, right is your uh like imagining is what I've
That
remembered
that
as.
that would probably sound right. This is confusing as I'm getting a mirror
That's
image
the
of myself
opposite.
anyway.
That's the opposite to the whole brain thing, isn't it? Because what you were
Quite
saying that left is imaginary, right is more
well,
like
maybe I've got it wrong
logical.
there. Only because I stereotype left-handed people as being very creative and
Yeah.
sometimes musical. And I know that the left-handed people use the right-hand side of the brain because it's sort of it goes across, doesn't it, for some reason? And it's the corpus callosum that divides up the brain's two hemispheres. And I think people who have suffered a stroke, one of the remedies is to, I think, either remove it or sever it. They can end up being literally unable to read with their left eye, but if they look at it with their right eye, they can. I think.
Wow.
I believe I'm correct in saying that. A lot of
I wonder
speculation going on tonight. Who
I
cares
wonder
about
whether
facts?
they've done any tests with lysergic acid, because that or like mushrooms or something like that, because that like merges pathways in your brain and it like forges links,
Does it
neural
really?
path. Yeah,
Okay,
so I wonder if that might help in like stroke recovery.
it might do. Is that how you get hallucinogenic, dream-like experiences in a waking state?
Yeah, I've never had like visuals, but I've had just like an expanded state where you're more conscious, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it was Aldous Huxley. He
Okay, yeah, makes
he was a
sense.
massive fan of it. I'm going off on a
Hmm.
tangent,
And
sorry.
now
Bring it back.
that's Brave New World. Am I right? No, that's okay. Did he write Brave New World?
Oh, I'm not sure. I read a book
Is that?
by it was the inventor of it,
I think
and
I'm correct in saying that.
sorry.
I think I'm correct in saying Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World, which is seen as like a precursor to 1984.
Okay, yeah, I think you might be right. 1984 was by a different author, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's 1984
But they were both
is,
friends, I think.
yeah. Um, 1984 is by Orwell, George Orwell, who also wrote Animal Farm and other. What's the other one? The Lion and the Unicorn, I think you're right. But let's go back to Hans Christian Andersen, and we've got as far as the second honest helper making his way down there. I know I'm not stupid, the man thought, so it must be that I'm unworthy of good office. These people have such low self-esteem. That's strange. I mustn't let anyone find out, though. So he praised the material he did not see. He declared he was delighted with the beautiful colours and the exquisite pattern. To the emperor, he said, it held me spellbound. Oh, I loved it. All the town was talking of this splendid cloth, and the emperor wanted to see it for himself while it was still in the looms. Attended by a band of chosen men, among whom were his two old trusted officials, the ones who had been to the weavers, he set out to see the two swindlers. He found them weaving with might and main, but without a thread in their loom. The term spinning a yarn comes to mind as well. That means lying to someone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I wonder, does that come from this story?
Wow.
Spinning a yarn.
Shall I Google it?
Go on, you Google it while I lead on here. Where do we get the term spinning a yarn from? Magnificent, said the two officials, already duped. Just look, your majesty, what colours, what a design. They pointed to the empty looms, each supposing that the other could see the stuff.
Wait, can you still hear me?
Yeah, go give us an update.
Oh, sorry, I didn't. Sorry.
That's all right. What's this? Thought the emperor. I can't see anything. This is terrible. That's his inner thoughts there, inner dialogue. Am I a fool? Am I unfit to be emperor? What a thing to happen to me of all people. Oh, it's very pretty, he said. It has my highest approval. And he nodded appropriation at the empty loom. Nothing could make him say that he couldn't see anything. He just can't admit the truth. His whole retinue stared. One saw no more than another, but they all joined the emperor in exclaiming, "Oh, it's very pretty," and they advised him to wear the clothes made of this wonderful cloth, especially for the great procession he was soon to lead. I wonder about mass hysteria. Have you ever come across that one?
Mass hysteria over what?
That's when a group of people seemingly all share the same hallucination at one point
yeah,
in
we've
time.
got it now with these bloody.
Well, let's not say too much. That's okay.
Yeah,
we've all got problems at the moment. Absolutely.
No, I wouldn't have done it to you. I wouldn't have done
That's
it to
all good. Don't worry, my friend.
So should I go on with that spinning a yarn thing?
Yeah, give me the spinning yarn thing, and then I'll just remind me to tell you about Fatima. But this is the miracle.
I'll try and remember it.
Yeah, but go on. What's spinning a yarn?
So it's saying most people believe that the phrase "spinning yarn" was originally a nautical idiom. Seamen often had to spend time repairing rope on board ship. Over time, these stories came to be known as yarns, and telling the story came to be known as spinning a yarn. So I think it was basically sailors saying that they were spinning yarns on ships, but were really like not doing anything.
I wonder what they were doing, all those men on the ship at that time. But yeah, you name it. Yarn, to me, it sounds like a very Scottish or Irish word. I don't know if it would be Ulster Scots, because they do weave a lot in these cold countries where they have lots of sheep. Believe it, there's a sheep here with me right now. Believe it or not.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring him in. We haven't named him yet, but there he is. It's you've heard of the rocking horse. This is a rocking sheep. Yeah, why not?
Nice. How much is that?
Yeah. Do you know the price is on it, but I don't actually know how much it is. I think it was no, it's just the tag.
£35.
Or 480. Can't believe it. You can have it for half price. The great
Wow.
procession he was soon to lead. Magnificent, excellent, unsurpassed, were bandied from mouth to mouth, and everyone did his best to seem well pleased. The emperor gave each of the swindlers a cross to wear in his buttonhole, and the title of Sir Weaver. So it's a very Christian community they're living in then, back then in Denmark. Before the procession, the swindlers sat up all night and burned more than 6 candles to show how busy they were finishing the emperor's new clothes. So they're really
How
keeping
many,
up this.
how many candles are on that Jewish thing?
Now, the menorah, I
Yeah, that's
believe, uh, you've got the menorah, and then you've got the candle that burned an extra. There's some that have an extra one to show that it burned for an extra day. And this relates back to Passover, I think. But I would have
but
to brush up on that. But yeah,
I
but
just
the
wondered if
menorah
it's
is it, it probably. I think it's is it 7 and some have an extra one, or 6 and one extra, and God rested on the 7th day, which of course is Saturday, the Sabbath, Shabbat, named after the planet Saturn, which is the 7th celestial body in the solar system, counting from the sun. But more about that another time. 6 candles to show how busy they were. Finishing the emperor's new clothes, they pretended to take the cloth off the loom. They made cuts in the air with huge scissors, and at last they said, "Now the emperor's new clothes are ready for him." Then the emperor himself came with his noblest noblemen, and the swindlers each raised an arm as if they were holding something. They said, "These are the trousers, here's the coat, and this is the mantle," naming each garment. Yet again, that magician's trick of looking at it as if it's really there. All of them are as light as a spider's web. One would almost think he had nothing on, but that's what makes them so fine. Exactly, all the noblemen agreed, though they could see nothing, for there was nothing to see. "If your imperial majesty will condescend to take your clothes off," said the swindlers, "we will help you on with your new clothes here in front of the long mirror." Now things are getting a little bit weird. If anyone ever asks you to do something similar, um, you know, just do not comply, as they say. The emperor undressed, and the swindlers pretended to put his new clothes on him, one garment after another. They took him around the waist and seemed to be fastening something that was his train as the emperor, turned round and round before the looking glass. That's a great archaic term for a mirror, isn't it? The looking glass. Alice through the looking glass. You familiar with that one? You must have watched Alice in Wonderland
uh I can
as a
vaguely
child.
remember it. Yeah, I think
Mm.
I can vaguely remember it. Um,
Yeah,
Alice,
there's a couple
she
of
makes like
stories.
a rabbit and she goes down a hole.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Where does the
But you
looking
see,
glass come into it
well, this is when you only get the Disney version of something, you don't realize that there's more than one story. There's Alice in Wonderland, and there's Alice through the looking glass. And I think Disney sort of amalgamated it all into one, but it's the idea that she's slipped into the mirror, and that's why everything is opposite, and everything would be what it wouldn't be, or whatever it is she says. But there is one scene at one point when she looks through a mirror, but it's a rabbit hole that she falls down uh, on the Disney classic. And of course, going down the rabbit hole has become a term that people throw around. We're all down there at some point. "How well your Majesty's new clothes look. Aren't they becoming?" he heard on all sides. "That pattern so perfect, these colours so suitable, it is a magnificent outfit." Then the ministers of public processions announced, "Your Majesty's canopy is waiting outside." I sometimes wonder, did people treat the likes of Saddam Hussein like this. You know, when you've got a brutal dictator that's renowned for snuffing people out at any point. I remember watching that dramatization. I think they just called it the family or something, and people were desperate to show their loyalty to Saddam Hussein because he would kill anyone perceived as a collaborator. That's a great word that gets thrown around. And even from my travels in Syria, seeing pictures of Bashar al-Assad everywhere and his father also. And I am a supporter of Bashar al-Assad in the sense that I think he's the lesser of two evils. But I was aware of propaganda and of people being not really able to say what they really think about the president or the emperor in this case. Well, I'm supposed to be ready, the emperor said, and turned again for one look in the mirror. It is a remarkable fit, isn't it? He seemed to regard his costume with the greatest interest. The noblemen who were to carry his train stooped low and reached for the floor, as if they were picking up his mantle. Then they pretended to lift and hold it high. They didn't dare admit they had nothing to hold. So off went the emperor in procession under his splendid canopy. Everyone in the streets and the windows said, "Oh, how fine are the emperor's new clothes! Don't they fit him to perfection?" And see his long train. Nobody would confess that he couldn't see anything, for that would prove him either unfit for his position or a fool. No costume the emperor had worn before was ever such a complete success. But he hasn't got anything on, a little child said. This is apparently the crucial part of the story. It is a child who notices and points out that the emperor is naked. And this reminds me of the fact that, again, coming back to magic, very often a child will rumble your magic trick and will spot what you've done, and adults will not, because children are still learning. They are still taking everything in. They are accepting things as they see them, and they're not just going by what they're told, they're going by what they see. It's like, the typical, "Oh, don't be rude, don't stare, why is that man in a wheelchair, mummy?" Children are not embarrassed like we are, so they will not be afraid to call out the truth when they see it. Now let's see what happens with this young child.
If you give a child like a piglet or an apple, and you say, "Which one would you like to eat?" they'll probably pick the apple every time.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, so much we haven't yet learned, and that's sometimes a good thing. I remember one of the great boxing trainers in my life, a man called Rob Peddy, who I'd love to track down at Christmas and find out if he's still with us, because he would be getting on by now. And when he would get a newcomer in the gym and they say, "Oh, no, I've never done boxing before, don't know what I'm doing," he'd be say, "That's great, you haven't got any faults," because he thinks other trainers are going to teach you bad habits, they're going to teach you wrong technique, and he's got you like a clean slate, and he can turn you into and his style of fighting was very different from another trainer that I had, and I had to amalgamate the two. But the variety is the spice, as we know. "Did you ever hear such innocent prattle?" said its father. This is a weird translation. So the child is a little child said, but he hasn't got anything on. "Did you ever hear such innocent prattle?" said its father. Here's an early case of gender-neutral pronouns being used in a story. We don't know whether the child. I always thought it was a little boy, but it's a little child. Being non-gender specific, we are being told
Who's the father? The father of who? Sorry.
of the little child who said,
Okay.
"But he hasn't got anything on." Said the little
Hmm.
child. "Did you ever hear such innocent prattle?" Said its father. And one person whispered to another what the child had said. "He hasn't anything on." A child says he hasn't anything on, but he hasn't got anything on. The whole town cried. At last, the pennies dropped now. The emperor shivered, for he suspected they were right. But he thought, this procession has got to go on. So he walked more proudly than ever as his noblemen held high the train that wasn't there at all. Yeah, the show must go on. So he realized that he was naked. He realized that the people knew he was naked, thanks to the little boy or girl. But he's already there. The show must go on. Wow. Peace. It's been a marathon. I don't know what you take from that, other than don't go out naked in the street.
Yeah. So there's normally a meaning to them, isn't there? So
There
it's
should be something.
this meaning is what I get from it is if you're already doing something and you realise you've got it wrong, just keep doing it and hold your head up high, which is an awful moral to teach. So surely that's not the moral it's teaching.
Well, I guess the moral that came through earlier in the story was trust your own judgment. If
That's
something
bollocks. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
that's all right, it's minor. You don't think it's trust your own judgment if if you can really see that the king is naked and you're the only one in the room. I was in a room of adults once in a professional context when a borderline racial comment was made, and I felt I should say something, and then there was an awful, horrifying silence that I hoped would be filled by someone else saying something. I was like, my goodness, someone's about to say, no, that's inappropriate. No, I'm going
And
to
then by
have
the
to.
time that you waited, it
By
was
the
too
time
late.
I waited, it was almost too late. And I had to embarrassingly say, "No, hold on a minute." And I think the phrase I said is that would be pandering to racism. It's a long story that doesn't even require explaining at this point. But I felt I needed to say something, and I did almost miss that window of opportunity before the conversation had gone on and the king had carried on in the nude.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
I would say trust your own judgment. Sometimes a lot of people say just listen to experts, but
yeah, but
I don't know. We need
I
to
agree with you.
yeah,
I
we
think
need
we're
to remember.
fallible, but we've
Well,
only
we
got our own judgment. So I suppose that's the only thing you've got to go off, but it doesn't mean that you can trust it because
that's
we're
right.
fallible.
And what is it they say on the tube? If something doesn't seem right, see it, say it, sorted.
Oh, okay.
I think that was an anti-terrorism campaign. But really appreciate you joining me tonight, man. It always
Thanks for
makes
having
it
me on.
10 times better when I'm bouncing off someone, and you're a great co-host.
I'm
There you are.
mediocre.
No, you're top. All right, my bro. We'll do it all again soon. Thank you for watching. This has been Lessons for Life, and we were here. We're gone. Laters.